How long does it take to turn $100,000 into 1 million? Most people guess a number between 40 and 60 years. The actual answer, at 10% average nominal return with $500 a month in continued contributions, is roughly 17 years. Not 80, not 50, 17. The same person who spent 8 years grinding to the first 100,000 will spend 17 more reaching 1 million. 25 years total. And the second stretch, the one from 100,000 to a million, will feel fundamentally different from the first because the math underneath it has changed. I'm Warren. Last video we mapped the 8-4-3 rule, the 3 phases of reaching 100,000. Today we extend the curve. Same contribution, same return rate, same index fund. But the numbers on this side of the chart are large enough to feel unreal. They're not. They're arithmetic. And the arithmetic is the most optimistic thing in this entire series. The before. At 100,000, the person has been investing for roughly 8 years. They've contributed about 48,000 of their own money. The market has added roughly 52,000. The split is almost even. The person still feels like they're doing most of the work. The monthly statement shows growth, but not dramatically more than the contribution. The number is 6 digits, which feels significant, but the pace feels slow. The curve from video 15 is still in its flat section, just beginning to bend. Everything that follows happens because of mass. The portfolio now weighs enough to generate its own gravity. Phase 1 of the snowball, mass, from 100,000 to 250,000. This stretch takes roughly 6 to 7 years at 500 a month. During these years, total new contributions amount to about 36 to 42,000. Market growth contributes roughly 110 to 115,000. The ratio is now roughly 3 to 1 in favor of the market. For every dollar the person puts in, the market puts in 3. That ratio, more than any specific number, is the signal that the snowball has started. This is where the experience of investing changes permanently. The monthly contribution of $500, which was the dominant force for 8 years, becomes a supporting actor. The portfolio's own returns are the lead. Some months the market adds 4 or 5,000. The person added 500. Some months the market takes back 6,000 and the person's contribution barely dents the loss. The volatility is higher because the base is larger, but the trajectory over any 12-month period is consistently upward. If you check the balance quarterly instead of monthly, the picture is smoother. If you check daily, the picture is K's. Both views describe the same curve. The quarterly view is more honest. There's a specific milestone inside this phase that connects back to every video in the series. At roughly 140,000, the portfolio's annual growth exceeds the person's annual contribution for the first time. At 10% on 140,000, the market generates 14,000 in a year. The person contributes 6,000. The crossover. This number matters because it represents the moment where the person's labor stops being the primary driver of growth and compound interest takes over. From this point forward, the portfolio is the primary engine. The person is the auxiliary. That shift, once it happens, never reverses. The market's contribution only grows larger. The person's stays roughly constant. By 200,000, the market is generating 20,000 a year. The person is still contributing 6. The ratio is over 3 to 1. The snowball has enough mass to roll on its own. And the person who built it, the one who endured the flat stretch from video 15, finally gets to feel what the curve looks like from the other side. Phase 2 of the snowball, velocity, from 250,000 to 500,000. This phase takes roughly 5 to 6 years. New contributions, 30 to 36,000. Market growth, roughly 220,000. The ratio is now 6 or 7 to 1. The person's contribution is less than 15% of total growth. The portfolio is moving under its own power. If you've been following this series from video 1, this is the stretch where the architecture pays off most visibly. The pyramid from video 7 directed the money. The routine from video 8 automated it. The rules from video 9 protected it. The portfolio from video 10 housed it. The 8-4-3 rule from video 15 explained why the early years were slow. And now, in phase 2 of the snowball, the compound machine built across 10 videos is producing visible results without any additional effort from the person who built it. The system runs, the person lives, the balance grows. During this phase, the monthly statements become genuinely surprising. A good quarter adds 30 to 40,000. A bad quarter subtracts 20. The annual growth in raw dollar terms now exceeds most people's annual salary. At 400,000, 10% growth is 40,000 a year. If the person earns 60,000, their portfolio earned 2/3 of their salary in passive growth alone. That number deserves a pause. 2/3 of a salary generated by a portfolio that the person built by transferring $500 a month and not touching it. No overtime, no promotion, no second job, just time and mass. That realization, when it arrives, usually happens on an ordinary evening. The person opens the Fidelity app or the Schwab dashboard, sees the number, and does the subtraction in their head. Last year's balance versus this year's. Minus contributions. The remainder is what the market added. And the remainder is larger than expected. Larger than any single financial decision the person made that year. Larger possibly than any raise they received. That moment, quiet and unremarkable, sitting on a couch or standing at a kitchen counter, is the moment the snowball becomes visible to the naked eye. It was always there. The mass was always accumulating. The velocity was always building. But this is the first time the person can feel it without looking at a chart. There's a behavioral risk in this phase that's worth naming. As the balance grows into the mid-hundreds of thousands, the temptation to do something with it increases. To withdraw some for a renovation. To shift into riskier investments chasing faster growth. To stop contributing because the market is doing the work anyway. Each of these impulses makes individual sense. Each one damages the snowball. The renovation withdraws mass from the ball. The risky shift introduces volatility that can erode mass in a single downturn. Stopping contributions removes the behavioral anchor that keeps the person connected to the system. The protocol here is the same as every other video in this series. Don't touch it, don't change it, let it compound. The snowball's only enemy is the person who built it deciding to take a piece off. Phase 3 of the snowball, gravity, from 500,000 to 1 million. This phase takes roughly 5 to 6 years. New contributions, 30 to 36,000. Market growth, roughly 470,000. The ratio is over 13 to 1. The person's contributions are roughly 6% of total growth. The portfolio doesn't need the contributions anymore. It needs time. Time is the only remaining ingredient. At 750,000, the portfolio generates roughly 75,000 in annual growth. That's more than the median American household income. The portfolio earns more in a year than most people work for. If you've ever wondered what it means for money to work for you instead of the other way around, this is the literal mathematical definition. At 900,000, annual growth is 90,000. The person contributing 500 a month is adding 6,000 a year to a portfolio that's growing by 90,000 on its own. The contribution is a rounding error, but stopping it would break the behavioral pattern that built the machine, so most people continue. Adriana's rule number 1 from video 9, automate and don't stop. There's a moment during phase 3 that every long-term investor describes in similar terms. The balance crosses a number that the person never seriously believed they'd reach. For some, it's 500,000. For others, 750. The number on the screen exceeds any amount the person has ever held, earned in a single year, or imagined having in a single account. And the reaction isn't euphoria. It's disorientation. The number doesn't feel real because it's disconnected from the effort that created it. The person contributed 150,000 over 20 plus years. The market added the rest. The feeling is closer to discovering that a plant in the backyard grew into a tree while nobody was watching. The growth happened. The person just wasn't the one doing the growing. The $1 million mark arrives after roughly 25 total years of investing. 8 years to 100,000, 17 more to 1 million. 25 years. At 500 a month, the person's total lifetime contributions at that point are roughly $150,000. The portfolio is 1 million. That means 850,000 of the million came from market growth. 85% of the final number was produced by compound interest, not by the person's paycheck. The person provided the seed. The market grew the tree. Here's the part of the snowball math that this video exists to deliver, because it's the part that changes how a person thinks about the next 15 years of their life. The first 100,000 required 8 years and roughly 48,000 in contributions. The last 100,000 from 900,000 to 1 million required roughly 1 year and 6,000 in contributions. Same person, same monthly transfer, same $500. The first 100,000 felt like pushing a boulder up a mountain for almost a decade. The last 100,000 felt like the boulder rolling downhill on its own. That's the snowball. The mass increases, the velocity increases, the effort required decreases. And the person who understands this shape, who can see the curve in their head while sitting in the flat section, is the person who doesn't stop. The year-by-year table condensed. Year 8, roughly 100,000. Year 12, roughly 200,000. Year 15, roughly 300,000. Year 17, roughly 400,000. Year 19, roughly 500,000. Year 21, roughly 650,000. Year 23, roughly 820,000. Year 25, roughly 1 million. Each interval gets shorter, each jump gets larger. The curve is steepening at every point, and at no point does the monthly contribution change. 500, every month. For 25 years, if you take one thing from this table, make it this. The distance from year 8 to year 15, 100,000 to 300,000 is 7 years. The distance from year 15 to year 25, 300,000 to 1 million is 10 years. 700,000 of growth in 10 years versus 200,000 in 7. The back half of the curve produces 3.5 times more wealth per year than the front half. That's compound interest in a single comparison. And that comparison is why every person who quits in the front half is leaving the majority of the curve's output on the table. If you're in the flat stretch right now, the one where the balance barely moves and the monthly transfer feels pointless, the table above is the terrain map for where the trail leads. The flat stretch is phase 1 from video 15. It ends. It always ends. And what comes after it is a curve that bends so steeply that the person inside it can barely believe the numbers on the screen came from the same $500 a month. Here's a practical way to see where you stand on the snowball curve right now. Open the investment account, divide the balance by 100,000, that gives the current $100,000 bracket. Then check the annual growth. Pull last year's ending balance, subtract the beginning balance, subtract contributions. The remainder is market growth. If that growth number is smaller than annual contributions, the snowball is still building mass. If it's larger, the snowball is rolling. If it's 3 or 4 times larger, the snowball has entered phase 2 or 3, and the remaining distance to 1 million is shorter than the distance already traveled. There's a philosophical layer to the snowball that's worth naming before the next video. The curve isn't just a financial phenomenon. It's a model for how sustained effort compounds in any domain. The first years of anything, a career, a skill, a relationship, a creative practice, are flat. The effort is high. The visible result is low. The temptation to quit is constant. And the people who continue through the flat section eventually reach a point where the accumulated effort starts generating results on its own. The compound curve applies everywhere. Money just happens to be the domain where it's most precisely measurable. The snowball from 100,000 to 1 million is not a fantasy. It's not a best-case scenario. It's the historical average outcome of investing $500 a month in a broad market index fund for 25 years. The person who does this doesn't need to be lucky, doesn't need to pick stocks, doesn't need to time anything. They need to start, automate, and not stop. The snowball does the rest. The specific milestones for each year of the 30s. How much should be saved at 30? At 33, at 35, at 38. Not guidelines, numbers, benchmarks with teeth. That's the next video. The snowball meets the calendar.